Thank you all for hopping on today, which I is amazing because it's gorgeous out. This is the first really nice day that we've had in a long time. So thank you for spending time here with us at Critical Conversation. As always, this is being recorded. A copy of this will be uploaded to the intranet on the Critical Conversation page sometime next week. Please, if you could keep a pad of paper with you, jot down your thoughts and comments because chat is going to be turned off during the presentation. That way we can give Leonard our full attention. Once he's finished, we'll open it up and you can either ask questions in the chat or you can raise your emoji hand and we will call on you in the order that the question comment was received. And now I'm going to turn it over to Phil.
Thanks so much, Beth, and thanks for moderating today. And great to see everybody this afternoon. Really appreciate your time. Wanted to just remind you about a couple of important things that are coming up in the next few days. First and foremost, we have a retirement celebration for all of our retirees. Beth, it was there and then it popped away. I don't know what happened to it. There it is.
Can you see it?
Yep, we can now.
All right.
So please make sure that you RSVP if you're coming. We like to know that. It helps us to make accommodations for how much food we have for the event, but we're really looking forward to celebrating. We have a number of very special people, as we do every year, that are leaving us, and so we want to make sure that we get a chance to say a proper goodbye, and that's what the retirement celebration is all about. So next Thursday between 2 and 4, please RSVP and stop by the Nesmith House. I'll also just remind people that if for some reason you have RSVP'd and then you cannot attend, we always love to hear from you as well, because it gives us a better sense of what the real count is for the day as we plan for the future. So thank you for that. I also want to mention that even before we get to the 7th, next Thursday, that we have another critical conversation. Yes, we're just lining them up in the last couple of weeks before we get into finals and everything. So we have another critical conversation that's coming up on Tuesday the 5th. I don't have a slide for it, Beth, but thanks for searching. Essentially, we are going to be providing an open Q&A. We're going to have brief presentations by everyone on the President's Leadership Council to give you some updates of things that are going to be happening over the summer or things that are currently occurring, and then answer any questions you may have. This is especially helpful for faculty who may be leaving us at the end of May. So please make sure that you register. We'll get a reminder out about next critical conversation that is just a week away. I want to remind you about all of our, celebrations. This is an exciting time of the year for us and for our students. That we've got a number of graduations and pinnings that are all listed here, and in each and every case, there are students at the other end of this that really want to celebrate with the faculty and staff who have been part of their success here at the college. So the TRIO program graduation on Monday the 18th, the health program's pinning in the afternoon on Tuesday the 19th, and then, of course, the Evening of Excellence, where a lot of awards are given out to students in academic and student affairs at 6:30 on Tuesday the 19th, and both in the Lowell Memorial Auditorium. We have our edition for the second year that on Wednesday afternoon we'll be celebrating our dual enrollment students from across all of our 48 partner high schools who have exceeded in the number of credits that they've accomplished in their time with us, and whether they're coming here or going on to another institution, we want to make sure that we celebrate with them. Christine, you're just going to have to, there you go. Then we have, of course, commencement on Thursday, the May 21st, and then the reception afterwards. So wanted to remind you of all those dates. And the last thing I want to remind you about is happening in August, believe it or not. We will be welcoming 2 new vice presidents, the new provost, Dr. Sue Maggioni, and the new vice president for enrollment and student success, Dr. Nicole Harris. They will both be at our employee appreciation cookout, which will be on our Bedford campus from 12 to 2, and we'll confirm that and transportation and everything, but want you to save the date for Tuesday, August 4th. All right, that's it for announcements. I do want to thank Leonard for his willingness to share some really terrific work that's been done by all of the chief senior student affairs officers in an effort to update our student code of conduct and how important that is for us to really have a sense of where we are, and also to be able to give you some heads up on some things that may be coming up that we want you to be aware of. We know that students that come here to the institution have rights, but they also have responsibilities as members of our community. So it's really important for us to be aware of those. And so I'll turn this part of the conversation over to Leonard.
Thank you, Phil. And thank you all for joining. And I hope that I can give you some knowledge today that can help you. And let me just take this. Somebody pinned me on this, and I cannot stand looking at myself on the big screen. So let me share a screen now. And we'll get started here. Okay. Share. Okay. All right. Everybody can see my screen, correct? Okay. So, again, thank you for joining. I'm just going to share a little bit about navigating some challenges of the student issues, looking within the code of conduct. As Phil referenced, there are some changes and things of that sort. In this particular presentation, we'll talk about what we're currently in, and then as we kind of go through some of these, well, I'll bring in some perspective of what we do as an institution, that maybe where we're hoping to go on the larger side. So there's some patting on the back in that regard. So this particular presentation is really somewhat of an invitation to you as faculty, as staff, to kind of help me collect some data, feedback, your perspective on what your experience has been with some of the student issues that you face, that I can then take to a larger group. We can use that with our particular group to, as we continue to work on the policy change, to use it as some data to help foster the right knowledge that should go within the code of conduct as things evolve. And so just a little bit about what's happening here. So I meet with a system-wide, all the dean of students or code of conduct officers within the Massachusetts community college sector. We typically discuss policy issues or policy changes that are needed. We talk about or get legal counsel on particular areas that are so associated with our college. But we also talk about cases, and what's been happening amongst all the colleges is there has been increases, particularly within the code of conduct, with areas from academic dishonesty, AI usage, and interference with the college environment. And so that's we experienced that, as well as I referenced AI improper usage. And I know this is a mixed multitude here, but I at this point, every faculty member should have an AI policy statement within their syllabi that they then share with students. So their students are understanding of what they can explore within AI or what they can't explore within AI. But it's very critical because particularly the student affairs areas like ACE Tutoring Center, for example, it's good for them to, when a student comes into the office, the student should be able to articulate what that policy is, so they best know how to help navigate that particular class with the tutoring session with that student. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that later. The biggest piece here, as I referenced, is my desire is to work with you on these issues and to get us some understanding of what's going on, so we can decrease numbers that are as throughout the academic year. My clicker's not working. Apologies. Okay, so what do we currently have within the code of conduct when it comes down to disrupting the college environment? There's two ways staff and faculty can address student behavior. There's the informal route, in which case, if a particular staff member or faculty feels their threshold is fairly high, and let me pause there. People's thresholds can be different. There's no cookie cutter way of saying you should be able to address this versus you shouldn't. People are different, whether it's past trauma or perhaps you have, K through 12 experience and you've worked in the fire of middle school. And if anybody's ever worked in a middle school, the students are transitioning and they, as they are budding into puberty, and there's just a lot of chaos that comes within that. Helps when you come into adult settings and of how to manage people and navigate feelings. So that being said, informal ways of addressing student behavior, you may feel comfortable with telling a student, hey, you need to leave. I'll meet you in my office during our office hours. Let's discuss this issue. Let's have this hard conversation. And then we resolved it and we move back on, we get back on course and we continue our academic year. That's an option for you. But perhaps your threshold isn't that high and you have an experience, it doesn't go over well for you, and you want to go the formal route. And that's, sending things or putting in a care report or emailing me directly, Russ, I had this encounter with a student. I would like your support, and we then take it through the conduct process. And so it says Code of Conduct Administrator. I am that. I'm the CCA here at the Middlesex. And so within that, there's I then step in, I then work with you, and then if you say, I don't want this particular person back in my space, or this particular person is not allowed in our office, um, we then have to go through the process, in which case that second bullet on the formal process, I may say, well, until we finish the conduct process, I can't, depending on safety, I can't restrict them from not accessing your space, but here's how we're going to do this until the investigation is fully completed. And so those are the two ways that you as faculty and staff have when it comes down to disruption of the learning environment or the college environment. But then as a faculty, you have some options here. And there's the again, addressing it and removing the student yourself, which I encourage. This is when part of this presentation is me saying I want more communication where you're emailing me when these things happen sooner than later. We've had situations where you are in your great work, address the issue, but then something else happens, let's say next semester because you had the student in a different class. And then when you email me or I'm emailed, I'm given I'm giving the full history, but they're put together as if it was one issue. And so I would, this is me preemptively saying, hey, let's communicate better. Once this happens or once you have an issue, it's always good to kind of, hey, FYI, which is why on the care side, we always say small or big, send us a care report because it at least allows us to have data. And then when it comes down to just really removing the student, even from the clinical side, me and that particular area, the health, where we're working a lot closer this semester when it comes down to removal of students or just notification of we have to remove the student because it's important to know that these type of decisions don't just impact the student in a silo. It has a ripple effect that impacts the college from graduation rates to a student's financial aid and just has and their ability to stay in the college, which then can hurt some level of our data as well. So one decision can have a big impact on the college as a whole. And so if, as it is in the last bullet, you have a situation where you're addressing a student and that student escalates, we always encourage reaching out to public safety and using their support to, if need be, to help you dissolve or de-escalate and or remove a student. Okay. Some other options when it comes down to academic dishonesty, which is proven to be the biggest hot, topic this particular academic year. You as a faculty still have the right to manage your class by addressing the student directly when it comes down to academic dishonesty by applying a failing grade to that assignment. And obviously what's in your syllabus. You also still have the right to issue a failing grade for the course. Now, and I'll pause here because I will say from what I've received since my time as a dean, I've only had about 4 cases where faculty said I failed this student because they cheated. I think most of the department chairs that I've spoken to, and I think really where the college has gone and is continuing to go, when we say we're student first, or we come from an educational model, we want students to learn from their mistakes and choices, and we want to build upon that. I can say from my personal working with faculty, I think we're really good in that regard, where we encourage, instead of failing the student, fail from the assignment, and then try to work with them to help them learn how, what's going on in their usage of whether it's AI or improper usage of citations, and let's build the students so they can make better choices and they can navigate their college experience from a learning perspective. We are good in that area. I can't say that for all other colleges, and so that is me, saying appreciation to the forward thinking of our faculty and the forward thinking of our chairs, and making sure that our practices are really beneficial to not only us but to our students. And so um, yeah, we'll stop there for that one. Other options when it comes down to academic dishonesty, as I referenced, removing of the student from the class, and how in the formal process, I may say the student needs to stay in the class. All students are entitled, and it's their right to have due process. And basically, within that process is being able to have an opportunity to learn what they're being, the allegation is, be able to respond to those allegations, and be able to say that I've gone through a process. I'm fully aware, I'm fully understanding of what's coming towards me, and I've had an opportunity to present myself and present my reasoning behind my decisions, in which case the school and the student can then move forward. It's very critical for that, because if a student doesn't receive due process, and we'll kind of touch on it as the presentation goes, that's when things kind of gets a little more formalized, and the students then file, grievances, and then there's PAAs, which we'll talk about a little later, which there's pros and cons to both of those. But when I say both pros and cons to, you know, apologies. There's not pros and cons to not giving a student due process. I'm reading a note that was for a previous slide, and it messed me up, so apologies for that. But of it all, it's important to make sure that we as staff as well as faculty do our parts to make sure students are aware of what their rights are, helping them navigate where those policies are within our website, as well as on our part, making sure they're easily available for our students. And so, but when a student then files a grade appeal, and I can't see anybody, and I kind of wanted to have some dialogue, but if we have time in the middle, if it's okay, is there who's had a grade appeal, or have gone through the grade appeal process? What was it like for you? Was it a good experience or bad experience? If you raise your hand, I can't see a soul. So please unmute. I take one or two.
I don't see any raised hands, Leonard.
Okay. Not a problem. So we'll continue on. Some have experienced a grade appeal process. And so at the end of this, I have some feedback survey that I hope that you all will participate in. But within the grade appeal process, as you can see, faculty participation is required. And it's important to know that, it's something you can't ignore. But it's important to know that, because if you do ignore it, there are also systems in place that we have to address it, but it very well may not go in your favor the way you want it to. And so, of these, a student will then just so we understand a little bit about how that works, a student will reach out to me. I have an issue with this particular course and I want to file appeal. I believe my grade should be this. And grade appeals, as it states in the first bullet, can only be done post the final grade. I've had students reach out to me and make requests for appealing on a particular assignment, in which case I then turn them back to the faculty saying, this is something you need to work out with the faculty to address that grade at current stage. And so I have an example at the back end of this that we can kind of dialogue about when it can impact. But that appeal comes to the student grievance officer, which is me. And then from there, I then reach out to the faculty and notifying them that there's a grade appeal, and in which case they then give a response. And so as I have an example for off-contract grade appeal, and so for me, grade appeals are really easy in the fall term coming to the spring because everybody's still here. The hard one is when the final grades are put in. I think we end in the next couple of weeks, but if that final grade isn't put in till towards the end of June or a couple of days after commencement, which it shouldn't be, but things happen. A student has 30 days post the final grade to then submit their grade appeal. And so from that point, I then reach out to the faculty member that's off contract, potentially in France or traveling, asking them for a response to a student's grade appeal and them saying their grade was miscalculated and they believe their grade is an A when you gave them a B, or their grade is a C and you gave them an F. And at that point, I'm reaching out to you and it's quite a few emails asking you to give a response. But if I never get that response, I then escalate it to the dean of students, who then either reaches out to you as well, or I'm not dean of students, the dean of the academic area, who then reaches out to you and or takes the information provided to them and makes a decision on based upon what they have. And so that's just an example of how that grade appeal process will go. There's your faculty is given 10 days. The dean then has 10 days, which takes it about a month. And that's me underselling it a little bit. But then you have student grievances. And I put this here because I wanted to make sure you are aware of the differences between the two. A student grievance, a student can grieve a faculty's policy statement in citing that this particular policy is impacting my ability to have academic success, in which case I then will meet with the student. I then often will notify that faculty, but in most cases loop in the chair and the dean, depending on the grievance. Students often will grieve if a faculty member is not speaking to them appropriately, or they feel there's some level of injustice happening to them, which then could, incite, depending on what they say, incite an escalation to a PAA, which is a policy of affirmative action. And so, but a good example that I want to provide is here we have a student applied for a culinary arts program, where this particular culinary program was working with this, those who are coming out of the House of Corrections, or we call them returning citizens, and helping them to get some skills as they go back into the workforce. And so we had a student in this regard, not us, but this example, a student who was came out of the prison population system for a rape charge, applied for this program, but was denied because he didn't come out of a lower tier jail or House of Corrections. He then filed a grievance to his denial, appealing, saying that he was discriminated against because of the nature of the qualifications, and then that is a different. He said discrimination, but it's in relation to the policy, not necessarily that because he's a person of color and anything of that sort. So it wasn't found from the PAA side, but it was definitely a grievance against their reasoning for his denial based upon the qualification. So a student has every right to appeal or grieve any of those things. And so you may have a student who grieves your policy statement if you say, if you cheat, I'm going to fail you. They could grieve that policy statement saying that you are inhibiting their academic success. Any questions about that? Oh, we said questions at the end, so I'll keep going. Sorry. Okay, so this PAA that I've referenced, this policy of affirmative action, it's they're in place to ensure that students have a safe work and learning environment free of discrimination, harassment, and retaliation. I put all the categories that fall within the PAA here. I won't read them to you and bore you with those, but these are typically the reasons why somebody would say file a PAA against, whether it's a faculty member or a staff, or really one of those two areas there. And so then who does it go to? If it doesn't go to me, it goes to Pam Medina. She oversees this particular grievance, and there's typically obviously a complaint, and then there's an investigation on her part, which then produces a review and some decisions, and then the student has the ability to appeal that decision or just the outcome of that as well. And so I put her information there for your knowledge. And if you don't have it in your syllabus, I also will encourage you, put this particular policy so a student, is aware of their rights and who to talk to, so they can have dialogue and better understand what their rights are and what they can and can't do. And so I also wanted you all to just be aware of the process. We referenced that there's more grade appeals, there's grievances that are on the increase, the conducts are on the increase. But these how long these things take is what I want to just to share with you, just for your knowledge. A grade appeal in itself can take, I put 2 to plus months because post a final grade, a student has 30 days to submit it. So even in that, I added that in there because at that point the pool is open. But once a student lets it be known that they would like to file a grade appeal. Obviously there then there's a meeting that has to be scheduled with me. I then tell them what they need. They then give me all the information, at which case I submit it to you with the faculty, which then you have 10 days to respond to that. Post that response. If the student appeals that, I then have to submit it to the academic dean of your particular area, which then has 10 days to respond to that. And from there, there's a decision, and then the student is given that. So that runs its course. But then there's also the grievance aspect. And so we typically want to try to resolve all grievances within a month or 30-day process, because at some level it may be a mediation. There's some level it's, please go back and talk to the professor and work things out. But if that obviously doesn't go suffice, and there's a belief that there's discrimination, it may go to a PAA, in which case I have, on average between a 3 to 6 month window, because the same thing with the top, there's the need to schedule appointments, to then interviews, to then, writing up the interview notes, to then make a decision, and then there's the, review, and then there's potentially the appeal. So these processes take time. And so my hope is that as we continue to communicate, we can reduce some of the numbers so that me and some of my colleagues who oversee and work in some of these areas have the capacity to hold it all and then give you what you need, so that way you can continue to teach and continue to work with students. And so the final example I have where these can kind of run into each other is really, a student has alleged they were cheating on their writing assignment using AI. Happens. I get a lot of these all the time. The faculty shares a concern with me. I then reach out to the student, initiating the conduct process, which case they're now having to meet with me. Within the midst of meeting with me and trying to work with the student has failed the class because of that one assignment that the faculty gave them an F for or refused to grade because of the conduct process, and now the student has failed the class. They then submit a grade appeal, stating that their rights were violated, not violated. They didn't get their writing ability was in question because of their race and ethnicity. Their style of writing is there's plenty of reports that say AI kind of, depending on if English isn't your first language, you're more likely to be pinged for AI. And so they then say it's because of race and ethnicity. In the midst of me working with the faculty, in the midst of me working with the student, they highlight discrimination, and in which case I then turn it over to Pam, who then has to pick up this case and then take it through her process. So this one case, because of, as it is now, AI and the belief, the speculation of it, then causes a chain reaction that could take anywhere from a month to a semester just to resolve from one student. And so I have had some faculty say that, they have paid AI detectors, and theirs is the best. But the reality of it is, whether it's Perplexity, which is the newest one, everybody's saying this one's great, that really is just ChatGPT, Copilot, and all of them looped in one. There's a lot of false positives that come out of a number of these. And even when you may use ChatGPT and then use Copilot, even sometimes they conflict with each other and can cause false positives and or say one is not AI and another one says it is AI use from a student's assignment. So bottom line, I will always say, look for ways to evolve your practice, to utilize AI, and this is just me talking, utilize AI to help enhance your class, not create hard lines, to which case it could potentially cause more problems for you, more problems for the student. And so the last couple slides I have here is here's I really want us to work better together. And so you can share now what your experience has been, from the grade appeal to the academic dishonesty, or ways that you would like to work better with me, whether it's communication or what you would like to see, trainings, or whether it's AI or conduct related things. What is something you would like to see more of? And then what do you think would make just the whole process better for you? And so and the last one is, I have a survey here that I would love for you all to take a second and, scan, please give me the feedback. There's a little more than those 3 questions. There's about 6, so it's very short. But it'll help me, like I said at the top, collect data that I can take to the other CCAs, but also help me in my practice and working with you. Um, we'll go from there. Any questions?
Hi, yeah, so I have a bit of feedback, or one of the things you mentioned was ways that you can help us. What I would really appreciate it, what we could do some more guidance on our anti-AI because uh, I am very strongly against it, surprising no one. And so one thing I do right now is I run it against 3 checkers if I think something's AI, which usually goes for, you talk to them and they're borderline illiterate, but then, you get your paper back and it's words that I have to look up. Um, I run against 3 AI checkers and kind of give them the benefit of the doubt. So if all 3 of them say it's AI, then I'm kind of like, look, you got 3. But I would love a little more guidance or work from the college to help us, fight against it. Because I mean, per our, standards, we're able to choose what our own AI guideline is for our class.
Great piece. Wrote that down. Definitely put that into my survey. But also, I don't know if he's here yet, but I also preemptively touched Peter Shea on the shoulder and says, "Hey, AI is going to come up. We definitely want more of your support." So if he's in here, he can always speak to those things. But for now, that's something that I would definitely go back to him if he's not here and say, "How do you help me? Let's build some real things that we can give our faculty because I'm with you."
Yeah, and Ryan, I'd really encourage you to have an individual conversation with Peter. Um, as someone who's been a long time adjunct faculty member, he's been through these processes before. He may be able to talk through some scenarios with you. He has given to the entire college community multiple scenarios of what you could put in your syllabus as guidelines, but he could also walk through some individual pieces that may help clarify about the 3 checking and all that. I mean, the bottom line is I think it may be a perpetual challenge for you to be able to do this in the way that you may be approaching it, but I think it's a good idea to just have a conversation with Peter. And if you're open to it, seeing if there's some other way that you might be able to redesign the assignment or find a way to really get at the issue that you're trying to get at with the double and triple checking. So I would just suggest an individual consultation with Peter might be a really good idea. It might be helpful.
Awesome, thank you.
Any other questions?
Chat is open, so you can put your message into chat, your question or your comment, or you can raise your emoji hand and we will call on you.
Yeah, folks, I'm going to really encourage you to take this time either to publicly ask Leonard some questions or to connect with Leonard. I think what I find is that people have some confusion around the Student Code of Conduct and confusion about sort of how the process works in order for students to really go through the process to challenge some of what has occurred. As I mentioned earlier, students have rights, but they also have responsibilities. And, as faculty members or staff members, we're in the same boat here. So having a better understanding of the code of conduct and how that plays out was really helpful from Leonard to give you a sense of timing. And maybe you may have some particular instances or scenarios that you've addressed in your office or in your area. So encourage you to use this time to ask those questions now, because believe it or not, your question may be the same question that someone else has. So feel free to ask.
Leonard, can you put the link to the survey in chat?
Yes. Give me 1 second.
We've got Johanka and then Matthew in the on deck circle.
Johanka, go ahead.
Hi, Leonard. Thank you so much for that great information. So I've been a member of Middlesex for quite a few years now, and I was curious, how are the students notified? How are they aware of the code of conduct? I don't know if you have changed it over time now with technology. So how do they become aware? What is the code of conduct? Where to find this information? Thank you.
So at the beginning of the year, I send an email out to all students with details on from supports to the code of conduct. So it's emailed to them, to every student at the top of the year. When a student registers with an FYE or the IDS classes, I then do presentations to those particular students where we share the code of conduct. And then in most cases, it's on our website, so students can always, view it through the website. Through those three platforms, there's, the next piece that I would always say is helpful. If it isn't happening, we maybe, I get a good pulse here. Faculty to always share in their first, meeting with students going over their syllabi and referencing. There's a code of conduct and even naming you should go to the school website and review the code of conduct and or your student handbook. Because in that, it has the code of conduct. So from my standpoint, those are the ways a student would have access from faculty and staff, our website, and I share it out.
Yeah, it's a great question. And, Johanka, I would also mention that, Leonard, is it on the app? I'm pretty sure the code of conduct is also available to students on the app.
Yes.
The schools
Yes.
app. Yeah, got it.
Thank you.
Matthew.
So mine isn't so much a question as a statement. In the time that I was an academic dean and I dealt with grade appeals, the most helpful thing for me was when the syllabus had a very clear policy or set of policies around how grades were awarded and late work in particular. So that is just really good advice for all faculty, whether you're teaching one credit IDS or you've been teaching for a long time, or you're new at this. Be very concrete about what your policies are, because that is what will be relied upon if a student files a grade appeal. And then I guess the other piece that goes along with that is, as soon as you send an email saying, I don't accept late work, but in this case I will, as soon as you open that door for an individual student, you create some more difficulty in adjudicating a grade appeal. So, to start with a really strict policy like I don't accept late work, and then to accept late work, you make it feel very subjective and hard to make a ruling on. So just, some advice from having had to deal with some of those.
I appreciate this point, because when a student typically comes and talks to me about anything related to their class, my first question is, what does the policy say? And then remind them that is the contract that they have with, you as a professor, as well as themselves, that should govern all decisions. So that's a great point. Thank you, Matthew.
Leonard, what some of these questions and thoughts are bringing up is the fact that perhaps there's a way for offices that oftentimes have glass doors or glass, windows, or some notification near doors, that in different areas, it could be the registration area, it could be financial aid, number of areas. Perhaps we could even have a QR code that would directly link to the code of conduct, and it could be called code of conduct on the QR code. But then students, if a staff member or a faculty member ran into a particular issue, like Johanka maybe mentioned. A lot of times staff may be dealing with student issues. And of course, getting to you is critically important to help you navigate that process in terms of any behavioral issues that may come up. But just by even having the QR code and it says Student Code of Conduct at Middlesex Community College, something that seems, friendly, but accessing information that a staff member may be able to point to, would be another way that we can continue to educate people. So I really appreciate the comment that you made, Johanka, because I think it's a matter of, you're talking in an abstract way to students sometimes about something that they've seen or have been exposed to. But that's why the more times that code of conduct is in syllabi or is available in multiple platforms and areas for your LMS and all of that, the more we can educate students about this, the better a community we will have. And I think that being able to feel like we're supporting staff as much as we're supporting faculty is really important.
No, thank you for that, because there's always the person who builds the dresser without reading the manual, and then there's a person who, waits until it's a problem and then they read it. And so we want to make sure they have access. So I'll take that.
Leonard, we have a question that came into chat from Sean. Aside from the academic standards and code of conduct stated in the student handbook, is there a special presentation related to AI that is part of student orientation sessions?
None that I do. It would probably come from Peter if there is one. But now that that's said, I would love to connect with him to see what we can, and Deb Barker, to see how we can factor something that in maybe in my session.
Yeah, and Leonard, I would say that Peter will be this summer working on a series of modules for students in AI. Having just a module just on code of conduct and expectations would be a helpful addition to some of the other content areas that he's talking about doing. So that's a great suggestion from that.
Thank you.
Ashley, you are up.
Hi. So Leonard, first, thank you for the information. And I know you're looking into my request from earlier, but I thought just in case others are interested. So Leonard is looking into a medical note that just seemed kind of questionable. When we get something like that, should we just automatically go to you, or are there steps that we can do to look into it? So, because if it's like too much work for you, I don't know if there's something that I could have done on my end.
You It is always good to, that's why that's my job to do for you. If a student brings a medical form that you then question, it's okay to send it to me and says, this looks funny. Could you just double check this for me? You don't have to be the judge, juror, and decision making with all these things. That's why they pay me. And so that is mine to do. So please send that to me. You can do it two ways. What you did today, email it directly to me. Please look into this. I just don't understand this. Or fill out a care report and you can attach it within that. So then it's kind of then I can assign it to somebody else. So, but definitely that is not for you to have to feel like you have to do on top of all the other things you're doing. My goal here is, and some of this is really to communicate, to take some of the pressure off of you feeling like you have to deal with the student who, obviously if you build a rapport with a student and they share some things and, like I said, your threshold, you may say, I can handle the student telling me that they don't have childcare and that they can't come to class. I can handle that. But homelessness, loss of job, that's beyond me. Please go get some help. It is okay to tell a student that is beyond my capacity. Please seek out these services. It's not a slight against you as a person for saying I don't have the capacity to support you here, but I know where I can take you so you can get the help.
Any other questions or comments for Leonard?
No, I just want to thank Leonard. I think that people need to understand that what Leonard has said in his own direct way is he's here for this purpose, right? And in any case where you're in a situation where you're trying to navigate a challenging situation with a student that may be connected to the code of conduct or it may be behavioral, you have resources to use to be able to talk that through, get support, see when it's something you should be doing or something the college could be doing. I mean, the college is here to support you through those pieces. I think the AI piece is going to be something that, like everything else that we've been doing with AI, that you have to grow into. And I think Peter spoke pretty eloquently at assessment day and will continue to speak eloquently about the importance of us really over communicating about our expectations, especially for faculty, with students about what they can and cannot use AI for. But beyond that, it's going to be really important for faculty to begin to think about sort of how we can be more supportive of students as they're beginning to work with this technology. And that I think it's important for us to recognize kind of where we are in the time frame of things. And I appreciate sincerely those who want to rail against what's going on with this piece. But at the same time, we already know all of our students are using it. A number of our staff are using it, and it's actually going to be part of what employers are expecting of them. And so I think we have to have a realization that AI is here to stay. It's not something you're going to individually in your classroom make go away. So let's figure out how we best work with it. And I think that Peter can be a tremendous resource for that. And I think there's an opportunity to be working with the group that he's put together to help advise him to really get a better sense of where we've seen some real impact in the way that faculty have been able to interact and communicate with students around these expectations. So appreciate all of your work. And Leonard, thank you so much for your presentation today. And I want people to know that the Dean of Students is here for you, for your support. And as you run into issues, especially issues of plagiarism and cheating, that there are challenges in all of this that we're all facing that are rapidly changing. And so this is going to be an evolving scenario for all of us. But getting your feedback and being in conversation about this is the most critical piece at this point. So really appreciate your participation today.
Can I say one thing, Phil?
Sure you can.
So I tend to leave my door open when I'm in my office because I am approachable. I tend to try to walk through the hallways so people can see me because I know sometimes I have a serious face, but I'm very approachable, and I'm not above a hard conversation. I don't, so if you didn't like a process or you had questions, it's okay to talk to me. It's okay to, express your frustration. I am never above sorry. I will be the first to take accountability if I've done something wrong. I know there's people in this Zoom link to say and says, yep, like he's tried to right his wrong. So please communicate with me. Now, I'm not saying that's a license to talk to me any kind of way. We're adults and we're, professional, but I can have hard conversations. So please trust me in that regard.
All right, I do not see any more hands up, and I see lots of claps coming in for Leonard, and I do not see anything else in chat.
Leonard, thank you again, and thank you for everyone for participating. Know that this resource is here for you, and as Leonard said, as we've talked through some of the issues with AI and cheating, et cetera, that this is going to be an evolving platform. We want to continue to have open communication as you run into particular issues, or you're test driving something in your syllabus, or you're working with something with the students that you're working with. Please share that and engage with Peter and Leonard as we move forward, because we're all learning as fast as we can to be able to address the evolving situation that we have in higher education. So thank you again, everyone, for participating. We look forward to seeing you next Tuesday for an update with my senior staff. And in the meantime, have a great rest of your day.